So we're sisters, and originally when my husband and I became foster parents, we had talked about it, and we had become certified and gotten our first kids, which were a brother and sister who had just come into care, and they also had an infant sibling, an infant baby sister.
And right about the time that we accepted her as a placement, Karen came on board as her CASA worker. At that time, I had no clue what CASA was, and I did not know what a CASA volunteer might do. And it would be later that I would learn how critical it would be to have a CASA volunteer like Karen on this case as it unfolded.
Our son's life began in basically in a state of chaos. So at the time of his birth, his mother had already entered into a new relationship with a man who was not his father. As a young infant, he was the victim of physical abuse. In order for his mother to be able to continue to parent him, a judge in the county where he was living at the time had required that there be no contact between our son and his mother's boyfriend. To avoid detection, rather than complying with this order, this young couple moved to Bowling Green. That's where the story began. After that, there were 2 young daughters born to this couple, and our son continued to live in instability. He knew homelessness. He knew domestic violence. He felt that his role in his family was a protector to his mother.
Our wonderful oldest child is now 8. He has these beautiful dimples that when he walks in the room, he just lights up any room. He smiles, but when I met him at the age of 4 to 5 years old, he was carrying so much on his shoulders.
The first thing that Karen did whenever she came on board on the case was she meticulously went through the case files. She looked through court orders. And then most importantly, she took the time to get to know the kids and also try to foster a relationship with them.
And then when I met the middle child, his younger sister, she was about 2.5 to 3 years old, and she was incredibly loving. At the same time, she took on the caretaker role. While the older brother was the protector, she was the caretaker because she had the baby sister.
There was another instance here in Warren County that brought them to the attention of DCBS. So that was at the time that they came into our home in early 2016. This was another case or an instance where a child had been harmed as a result of a fight between the parents. And that brought them to the notice that our son had, again, been around this person that he was supposed to not be with. This brought evidence that this no contact order had been violated.
The birth mother announced to us that she would be moving with the children 4 hours away. We were absolutely petrified that she would be moving 4 hours away with the children when we knew that their situation was deteriorating and their level of care, and we were just so afraid of what might happen to them. At that time, Karen took the evidence to the guardian ad litem to let him know that the children were in danger, and he petitioned the court to bring them back into safety in foster care.
So this wasn't the case of a parent who wasn't given chances. This was a case where, regardless of a mother's love for her kids and willingness to go that extra mile to get them back in her home, it was a pattern of exposure to a person who continually exposed them to violence, instability.
Because of Karen, we will be adopting our little girl very soon. If it weren't for her and her advocacy, our daughter would perhaps not have housing. She never has to worry again about being unclean, not being fed, witnessing domestic violence, not having a home to go home to. And had Karen not been there, coordinating those efforts between all involved parties and advocating for her, I'm really frightened of what the outcome would have been.
The day that we discovered there was a termination of parental rights, it was almost as though a weight had been lifted off of the children's shoulders. And now that we're so close to the adoption, at one of the most recent visits that I had with the oldest, of course, when I first met him, he had a great deal of emotional distress that he was working through. But When I met with him that last time in his home setting, I just looked at him and said, you know, you look so calm and you look so happy. I can't help but notice, you know, that you can take a deep breath. And I said, you know, how are you feeling? We talked about changing his last name. We talked about the adoption. And I said, but you look so calm and you look so happy. And he just leaned back and said, because I finally am. And to me, that made these last 3.5 years all worth every second for me.